right, welcome to the Bible study. I appreciate everyone who's here for our study on prudence tonight. Hopefully, everyone got my message earlier that we had originally thought Dr. Martin would be back with us today. However, after talking to Brother Toller, I found out that Dr. Martin's not going to be available yet. It'll be next month now. Some things he thought would happen that would make him able to do the Bible study this month fell through. And so he says by next month he for sure will be ready. So we'll be looking to have Dr. Martin back with us the end of June, which is a good time. It's coming in around that 5-year anniversary of the church. It'd be nice to have him as a part of that period there at the end of the month. And then, of course, also June's a very busy month for me, so it'd be nice to have the help, I guess I can say. With that in mind, let me throw one little announcement out there before we get into the Bible study tonight, and that is that next week there is no Tuesday live stream Bible study. And that's because next week we have conference, and next week we'll be very busy. Next week there will be a service every evening at 7, except for Monday and Tuesday, and that includes Saturday as well. There will be a service, Wednesday through Saturday at 7 in the evening, so at this time slot. And then also in the morning in Belgian time, we'll have a service at 10 o'clock every day. So there will be multiple live streams, not Wednesday, I'm sorry, let me clarify that. I'm not doing a good job explaining. Thursday and Friday, there will be a service at 10. So there'll be multiple extra live streams going on next week. And so because of that, I'm just taking the Tuesday off to be free to be able to get stuff ready for the conference. The following Tuesday will be a little bit different because the intention is that instead of having the normal Bible study, we're actually going to do a very special Pastors React that day. I got flagged last time when I spoke about the LGBTQ movement, so I decided to go put my foot back into that water again and get in trouble again. So we're going to be talking about Pride Month. And I wanted to get it out while it's still Pride Month, but all my Saturdays are occupied. So I had to fit it in where I could, and that'll be the Tuesday after the conference. So no Bible study next Tuesday, the week of the conference. The following Tuesday, we'll make up for it with something extra special. Having the Pastors React should be me, Brother Jesse Haley, and Brother Dalkey talking about Pride Month and all the things associated with that. And we'll see how it goes. We got to record that Thursday, so I don't know yet how it's going to go. All right. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get into Prudence. This is, we're really getting close to the end of all of this. We're getting to where for sure about mid-July, end of July, one of the two will be finished with this particular study of wisdom. It's been a lot of fun to go through it. I almost want to go back through it myself and listen to everything before we get to the end, just to make sure I didn't miss any ideas of stuff we should have covered, because it's such a big and deep subject. We've tried to use our chart to keep us on track. So as always, we'll start by throwing that up there. But as you see with our chart, we've discussed everything. I mean, we've discussed those middle circles. We've went around that middle band. We've been around the points that come out from that. And now we're closing in on the end of it by having talked about discretion, about being hasty in words, those two opposite of each other. And then now we're going to be talking about prudence today. And then when we come back after having the break for the conference and the Pastors React, and then I think Dr. Martin maybe even falls in there as well, or just before that one, we'll come back and we'll talk about being hasty in our actions. And then after that, the last one concerning this chart will probably combine being wise in your own conceit and a low self-esteem. It'll probably talk about those in one lesson. So I guess what I'm trying to say is after this, there's only 2 lessons for sure that we're going to do about wisdom after tonight. Probably we'll do 1 more, maybe 2 more in addition to that, just to go tie up any loose ends that we didn't get to throughout the study. But we'll have to see how that goes, if I feel that's really something that needs to be done. All right. So with that said, let's get to our study. Proverbs chapter 14 is where we're going to start at. It's not the first mention of prudence in Proverbs or in the Bible, but it's the verse that helps put us on the right track for getting a definition for prudence. So Proverbs chapter 14 and verse number 8 says, "The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit." So if you look at the chart that we had a minute ago, you'll note that prudence falls as a extension of wisdom and understanding. Now you're going to notice there's a lot about prudence that's tied to knowledge, but there's a perfectly good reason for that. and we'll talk about that in just a moment. In fact, that's actually in my later notes here. But Proverbs Proverbs 14 tells us that the wisdom of the prudent. So this is, you know, what how prudence and wisdom work together, I guess you can say it like that, is to understand his way. So you're noticing in this verse that really what the ability of prudence is to understand your way. And so this is a very simple answer as to what prudence is. I really want to focus down into it, but the chapter helps maybe to explain it a little bit more. And we'll start in verse 15. Now it's going to say this about wisdom, but we'll notice what I'm going to highlight in just a minute. But we'll notice that there's multiple verses that'll bring this point out about prudence. So let me get there. I don't lose you on the way. Let's start with verse 15. It says, "The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge." So, what he's telling us in these verses is that the real ability of a prudent man, this is the power of prudence, this is what it really means to be prudent, is to be able to consider your directions, consider your actions and what you're doing and where that's going to take you, and have the understanding to understand your way, to look at your life and see where this is going to go. The decisions I'm making today, where are they going to lead me tomorrow? And that's why, in reality, of the things we've talked about, which we've talked about some pretty important stuff, prudence is one of the most important things on the list. And if you think about it, it makes sense that it would be. I mean, wisdom and understanding are those principal things that really put us in a right direction. I mean, knowledge is high on the list with them, but more so than knowledge, wisdom and understanding are the two things that really set you in the right path. Again, I can't take away from knowledge. God tells you to get knowledge. I don't think I'm trying to put it low. It's just that is your education level. That's what you know. Whereas wisdom and understanding are abilities within your heart, things that grow there. And so when you have them, it makes knowledge easy. Knowledge is easy to him that understands. So those are the two that really take the priority here for us. And when we see this, it would then make sense that the thing that is produced by that combination, like if you put, because that's what prudence is, you put wisdom and understanding together and you grow them in the right direction, what you're going to produce is prudence. And prudence is an ability to take these two things, one of which, and this is where you're going to see it ties into knowledge. So I'll spoil that a little bit up front. One of which is an ability to take what knowledge you have, those building blocks, and build something with them, that being wisdom. Whereas understanding is an ability to take what information, what knowledge is being fed to you, and to break it down and make it into building blocks, to file it and organize it and know how to use it. So you have these two abilities that are very much connected to your knowledge, one, the ability to use it, the other, the ability to understand it. And you have those two things coming together to make this ability that is really incredible. It's an ability to look at where you're going and understand that, to look at your decisions and be able to, measure and weigh all of that, take it to heart, take in consideration where it's going, and see what it's gonna cause in your life. I would compare it most, or I guess I would illustrate it, I should say, most often by comparing it to how you drive. If you drive well, anybody who knows much about driving a car, driving bicycle, driving anything, walking down the street, you should use this kind of principle. But I'll keep it to cars for simplicity. Is if you're driving a car, you don't look, you know, a meter in front of your car to make your decisions. You look down the road, you look about as far down the road as you can see almost. And that way you're seeing where your path is taking you. And you have the ability to make decisions based off of stuff that's way down the road and not just reacting to what's right in front of you. And that's just wisdom when it comes to driving a car. I mean, that's basic stuff that anybody who's ever driven a car has been taught or should have been taught at some point in the process of learning to drive a car. Is if you're just reacting and all you're doing is oh there's a person in front of me, let me stop. you're going to have a very rough driving experience. You're going to be a very bad driver. You're going to make a lot of bad decisions. But if you're looking, and especially here in Europe, I probably don't have to preach this as much. I mean, in Europe, you have to constantly be looking. You have to be looking every direction around you, especially like if you're driving in the city. Like when you're driving in Ghent, you have to be constantly looking around you, taking in all the information that's coming at your direction, and quickly filing that away and making decisions. Like you have to watch the pedestrians and pay attention to their body language to see if they're getting ready to just run across the road, because they don't watch for a crosswalk. They just run where they want to a lot of times. You're constantly have to watch the car next to you to make sure that they're not texting and about to swerve into your lane. You're constantly have to look for bicycles to make sure that one's not just coming up out of nowhere and you don't see it yet. So you're constantly having to take all these stimuli, if I can use the scientific term for it. You have to use all these things that are there. You have to take them in and you have to process them. You're having to make decisions based off of them. That falls in that category of prudence. That's what prudence is as an ability. It's an ability to be weighing the variables and be looking at what's going on around you, to be looking at where your path is taking you very specifically, and make decisions based off of that. Now, in this passage, there is the phrase in verse number 16, a wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. Now, you notice in this case, it's slightly different than what I'm about to give you, because the Bible says something very similar about prudence twice. And this probably helps to illustrate a little bit of the difference between prudence and wisdom. He says, a wise man feareth evil. That he knows that evil is bad. He knows that it's going to hurt him, and so he fears it, and he goes away from it. When he sees it, he goes away from it. If he expects it, he goes away from it, so forth. But the difference between the wise man and the prudent is Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 both say, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. So you see the difference. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. So both of them have enough wisdom to realize when something's destructive, I have to turn away from this. And that's part of the point. That's the point of the verse. A wise man has the ability to realize that this is not good. This is destructive. This is harmful. This is morally bankrupt, whichever, potential definition of evil you want to use in this case. But he has the ability to realize that this is something that is not profitable. He should not be involved with this. And he fears that. He takes it very seriously. He realizes this isn't something I can play with. This is not a game. And so he runs from that. He turns away from it. Whereas a foolish person will just go headlong into it, that he's proud, he boasts his ability, he's not worried about consequences of the decisions. He thinks he can do whatever he wants to. And so he just runs straight into something and he gets in trouble because of that. There's consequences. And so he's going to suffer because he's not wise enough to realize that there are consequences to our decisions. Whereas a wise man up front does that. Now, you see that, then take what's said about prudence, and you'll see that it's similar, but there is a layer added to it. And that is that while the wise man has the ability, when he sees that, when he's doing something, to realize, okay, this is not good, a prudent man has the ability to see that farther down the road. He doesn't have to wait until it's time to make a decision to see it. He has the ability to look down the road. So in reality, I guess one way you can define prudence is it's putting your wisdom to use in advance. You're not just making decisions wisely now, you're looking down the road to make those decisions. You're looking at the consequence. Like, okay, if I don't save or invest money now, when I retire, what are the consequences? If I don't take care of my health now, when I retire, what are the consequences? It's that kind of ability, that kind of process. Because it's one thing to be able to take the knowledge you have and tackle the problem that's in front of you using that wisdom to apply that knowledge. That's one thing. It's another thing to be able to take that wisdom and take that knowledge and look at problems that you have not even encountered yet, things that are way down the road, and make proper decisions. And that's why prudence is such a powerful thing, because it allows you to be using your wisdom and exercising that wisdom well in advance of when you've actually encountered the problem. It allows you to be trying to set yourself on a proper path. And I guess one of the places where you see the need for this, you should be able to see it anywhere, but one of the places you can see the need for this the most is in parenting. With as a parent, your job is to take a child that has come to you, and everybody is born into this world with different personality traits, different problems, different strengths, different weaknesses, and you have to do one of two things. Either you can be reactionary, and that doesn't mean you can't make a wise decision. It's just eventually, if you're only reacting, you're going to make the wrong decision because you're not thinking about it long enough. You're just making the best quick decision you can. And the best quick decision you can make eventually is you're going to trip over that. So you can either address the problems as they come and, okay, now my child is starting to do this, so I guess I need to do this to counter that. Or you can do this with prudence. You can look at your child and realize, okay, the stuff that I'm dealing with now when they're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, that's the kind of stuff that amplifies and gets bigger throughout life. And if I don't deal with this now, then when they're a teenager, they're going to be monsters. Whatever problem I hate now is going to be amplified and become so much worse. And that's why, again, I think in parenting, this is one of the places I can illustrate it because I think for me, it's something I relate to. Maybe for you, you have to apply this to a different illustration. But for me, I look at my children and I see, that I pick on Emily with this, so let me try illustrating it a different way by picking on Josiah. Is that, with Josiah, I see him and I realize he's a very smart child. So I need to build that. I need to work in those things. I need to teach him and take advantage of that. But at the same time, he's also highly capable for pride because he also knows that he's smart. And I know what I was like. I was a monster as a teenager because I thought I knew everything. And I wasn't nearly as smart as what I thought I was. I'm trying to say it nicely. I was pretty dumb a lot of times, but I was a monster, and I know that the same thing that made me that way, he has a tremendous potential to be that way. And so right now, I'm trying to make sure when I answer him or I explain stuff to him, that I'm using those moments to teach him stuff and to go ahead and address it now and get it in his heart while he's little, so that when he's a teenager, I don't have to fight with that as much. And the truth is, no matter how much prudence you have, you're not going to catch everything. But it's a whole lot better to catch some of it now through prudence than it is to wait until, said child is an adult and you have to deal with it all then. I've often used, and I'll go to that illustration, with Emily, that I saw her temper, I saw that part of her personality, and I began to deal with it. Right now, what I see with Hannah is there's just like a lack of control, with her emotions. She just gets overwhelmed so easy with them. Most people only get to see the happy side of her, but I see what happens. Like when she gets sad, she's the saddest person in the whole world. And so I'm trying to rein that in, So with every child, you have to look at them and find, okay, this is what's here. This is what it's going to be in 2 years. This is what it's going to be in 3 years. This is what it's going to be in 4 years, and so forth. And so with my three that I have, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for and trying to identify the cracks that are developing so that I can patch them before they become big cracks. I'm trying to find the places where they're strong so I can build on those places because those are the places they have the ability to bear that weight. And you have to do that in everything. I mean, you have to do that with yourself. You have to do that with all the decisions you're making, with any relationships you have, but you're not going to be able to do it without prudence. If you're trying to look down the road and make decisions based off of what you're seeing, but you don't have the prudence to actually take the stimuli, take the information in and process it, then you're going to make the wrong decision. So that's the biggest thing. Like when understanding what prudence is, it's really that ability. It's that ability to look at yourself and realize, the things that right now are small things. If I look down the road and see where these small things will be in the next 10 years, do I really like that? Is this really where I think my life should be going? Is this really the habits I want to cultivate within myself? And it's a matter of dealing with those things while they're small instead of waiting till they're big things. It's a matter of seeing the problems that are going to come and turning from those while you still have time, while it's still easy to do it. Prudence is such a powerful thing because it allows you to do that. Now, the other side of prudence, and we've already touched on this a little bit, is where it comes into knowledge, and how it comes into our ability to learn and take in information. So Proverbs 16 and verse 21 is a good place to start getting into that. Proverbs 16 and verse 21 says, "The wise in heart shall be called prudent, and the sweetness of the lips increaseth learning." So he's telling us that someone who has a wise heart, we're going to call that person prudent. And he adds to that the idea that the sweetness of the lips increases learning. So when somebody says something in a nice way, when somebody's good at giving you information, it makes it easier for you to take it. You take in more information when it's presented to you well. I mean, I guess that's one way you can define what he's saying there. But the idea then is that um, when you have wisdom in your heart, it's going to theoretically produce prudence. I'm saying that because he does say that, the wise in heart shall be called prudent. This should be what you become, is that as wisdom grows in your heart, wisdom should grow in such a way that it begins to produce a side of you that you're not just reacting to the decisions that are here in front of you, but you're looking down the road. That should be the natural direction that wisdom is growing in your heart. And it shows you, when you think of it in those terms, knowing that understanding is part of this, since the wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way. It should show you that the natural growth of wisdom is to be intertwined with understanding. That wisdom and understanding should be, growing closer to one another, wrapping around one another in your heart, because he's telling you that the natural progression of your wisdom is that it does lead to prudence. That as wisdom and understanding grow in your heart, you begin to not just apply knowledge to the decision that's in front of you, but you start applying your knowledge to things that you can see coming down the road later on in life. Then Proverbs 18 and verse 15 says, "The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge." So what he's telling us is that the heart of the prudent is looking to get knowledge. And why is that? It's because the heart of the prudent is a wise and understanding heart. It is not just wise, not just understanding. It is a combination of the two. And if you go back and think of everything we've talked about concerning those two things up to this point, then you will note that everything we talked about is that those two things are constantly going to seek out knowledge. They want to learn, they want to increase in learning. And it's logical that they would do so for the simple reason of what have we already talked about. I mean, in this lesson, and that's that wisdom is an ability to take knowledge and apply it. Understanding is an ability to take the knowledge that's being given and, kind of break it down and file it away, to take the individual pieces and see how they work. So one is the ability to take the knowledge that's being fed into you and, make it into something that's usable. So it's not just a bunch of, blocks of text and information that's been poured out on you while you were sitting in some classroom. It's not just some experience you went through but you don't know what to make of it. It's an ability to take those experiences and turn them into usable information. It's an ability to take what you had poured out on you after years and years of college and turn it into usable information, because the truth is, doesn't matter how good of a teacher you have, uh, you don't necessarily walk away with the lesson, and because that's a matter of understanding. And the same thing with wisdom. Just because somebody did a very good job teaching something to you doesn't mean you have the ability to then take that knowledge and apply it, because that's wisdom. That's not the job of the teacher. The teacher can't make you able to apply what he gives you, and he can't necessarily make sure you take it and process it and know what to do with it either. He can't give you either of those abilities. Those are abilities that grow within your heart. And so once you realize that those are the two things that build into prudence, it then makes sense that prudence is going to be very hungry for knowledge, because that's the building blocks. That's what prudence, that's like if you have a car, but you don't have any gas for it, you don't have any diesel, you don't have anything to drive it with. Of course, your car is going to be hungry for that, because that's what keeps it going. And the same thing for your prudence. Your prudence wants more information because that's what it's using. It's using understanding to break it down and take it in and digest it and make it into something usable, and then it's taking wisdom to build it up and make decisions for a better future with it. And so that's why you and I really need this more than we'll ever understand. We need prudence so much because it allows us to not just make good decisions for today, but for the future. So as we continue to look at this, though, the Bible says quite a bit more. I got a little bit excited talking about that. So it says quite a bit more. Where are we at? Verse 18, Proverbs 18, verse 15. Did I read that already? The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. Just in case I did, let's read Proverbs 8 and verse 12 to go with it, because they say something quite similar. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. So we know that part of wisdom is this prudence, and part of their desire is that they're going to try to understand what's around them and get the knowledge of that, to take the knowledge of these things and file it away and have it as a usable resource. That's what they're going to do. Then Proverbs 13 and verse 16 says, every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly. So once you have prudence, you're going to take the knowledge that's there, and you're going to use that to make your decisions. And I guess the reason why I'm emphasizing this so much is because what you should be noticing by now is that prudence in many ways is not just the culmination of a healthy wisdom and healthy understanding growing in your heart, but because of their relationship to knowledge, is now bringing knowledge into the equation, and prudence is becoming one of the most powerful things on this whole list, because it is the combination of those two things. But as the combination of those two things, it's using the knowledge, the third thing. Because what does God teach us about wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? Those are the things you need to seek. These, with all you're getting, get wisdom, and I'm very much paraphrasing this, but with whatever's left, get knowledge and understanding. So, wisdom, I'm sorry, maybe I said that wrong. Get wisdom is the first thing we should get. And then with what's left, get knowledge and understanding. Now, what I'm trying to say is God tells us that wisdom is the principal thing. This is the one that you need it most, because once you get wisdom, wisdom will help you to apply what knowledge you have. It'll help to increase the understanding in your heart. But wisdom is the principal thing. But then with all thy getting, get knowledge and understanding. That's the next two. Now, the goal, in a sense, then, is that you're getting to prudence. This is where you're building towards. As your wisdom becomes solidified, as your understanding produces humility, the real ability that's at the pinnacle of all this that you're building to is prudence. It's this ability to take that wisdom and this understanding, mix them together, and then with that, throw in your knowledge, because that's what they're using. These two are then taking your knowledge to build this prudence. Sorry, throwing so many terms out there, I feel like I'm probably getting tongue-tied. I have to go back and listen to myself and see if I'm saying the right stuff sometimes or not. So Proverbs 12 and verse 23 says, a prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of the fools proclaimeth foolishness. So he's saying when someone's foolish, you can see it because it just pours out of them. They just proclaim it. They can't hide their foolishness. They're just full of foolishness, and it pours out. But he says a prudent man, they're full of knowledge. It's hidden inside of them. You may not always see it, but it's there. It's wrapped up inside of his heart, that he has plenty of or inside of his head, I guess you can say. But because of these abilities he has, because of who he is, he has this knowledge wrapped up inside of him. It's there. He takes what's given to him, he files it away quickly, and he uses it as he needs to make those proper decisions. Whereas the fool is full of foolishness, and so because of that, he's going to pour that foolishness out. And then finally, Proverbs 15 and verse 5. Proverbs 15 and verse 5. This is my last verse I have written down for tonight. I probably should have led by saying this probably won't be the longest of all lessons, because some of the notes that probably go with this about being hasty in action, I decided to hold them off to try to make a whole lesson out of that, because I want to preach more about the importance of actually thinking about your decisions and using this prudence. So Proverbs 15 and verse 5 says, "A fool despises his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent." So a foolish person is going to hate when somebody tries to correct them. But he says someone that regards reproof, like they're willing to take this in, they're going to listen to it, they're going to consider what you're saying. That person is prudent because they have the ability to realize that what you're giving them, whether they agree with you or not, whether it makes sense right now or not, is at least worthy of consideration. So this is showing you another side. While the primary focus of prudence is looking forward, the other side of prudence, which I've been trying to stress through these verses, is that it's also looking around to gather as much information as it can to make these decisions. So prudence is, as much as it is the ability to look forward and consider your path and where it's going, it also has the ability to take whatever information is being fed into you, and through the understanding that fuels prudence, to actually take that and measure that and weigh it and make the proper decisions based off of it. So that's why, to me, of anything on this list, there's a lot that could be said about these things. Of anything on this list, prudence is the one that is probably the least talked about. But when you look at it in terms of what the Bible says about it, maybe the most powerful thing on this list, because it is the culmination of everything else that's good that we've talked about. Prudence, it talks, I mean, you think about it, it's tied to discretion, even because it says that he's going to conceal his knowledge while the fool just pours out his foolishness. So he's going to have that knowledge stored away inside of him, and he's not going to say necessarily everything. There are some verses that point to the idea of prudence, holding their peace. So that side, I mean, let me bring the chart up and look at it in those terms, and we'll show how it contains so much of all this stuff. You think about everything on this list that's supposed to be the good. So that's the blue and the purple. Well, prudence is the combination of wisdom and understanding. So you already have those two primary building blocks. Then your primary building block in terms of your mind is going to be knowledge. You want to have knowledge. You want to know. You want to be educated through experience or actual, through education, but you want to have information. And prudence, because it's a building, something produced by wisdom and understanding, it's going to feed on knowledge. It's going to try to take in as much knowledge as possible. It's just natural that it would do that, because wisdom and understanding try to take in as much knowledge as possible. And because it uses that knowledge, it's going to be hungry to take in more of it. And so, of course, that's going to help to produce discretion and subtlety, as somebody's taking consideration of their words and speaking more intelligently. That's not necessarily a product of prudence, but you see that if you're producing prudence, you're very likely going to produce those two things. And someone who's prudent is going to take consideration not just of where he's going, but even of what he's saying. So discretion is going to normally accompany prudence. It's normal that somebody who's thinking about their decisions, thinking about where they're going and so forth, and their actions, that it's going to connect, that person's usually also going to be discreet. They're going to think about what they're saying, and how it might affect people, not just when they say it, but what they say and how they say it, all of those kind of things. Now, while that's a separate ability, and it's not something guaranteed to come with prudence, as you see, that's going to be affected by your education, by what you've experienced or what you've learned, what you've been taught. So it's going to be affected by those things. Certain experiences make you careful not to just say everything on your mind. Certainly, certain things you've been taught make you careful not to just say everything that you think. So the same thing's true, that with prudence, it's not, I shouldn't say same thing's true, but with prudence, you see that it's very similar in the way that it's connected, is that it's doing the same thing for your actions. It's making you step back and take consideration of your actions the same way that discretion makes you take consideration of your words. And that's why you're going to note that the opposite of being prudent is to be hasty in your actions. So you see that sound wisdom, it should be produced when somebody has wisdom. It just, wisdom flows on a chart. And as you get higher and higher in that chart, as you go up into the positive numbers, it becomes more sound. It becomes more strong the farther you get away from foolishness. Understanding has a almost circular relationship with humility, that they both help to produce one another. However, understanding we see to be more deeper at the heart of this. And then we see, finally coming back to our point of the lesson tonight, and that's prudence. That prudence is going to be the thing that really caps all this up. So at this point, we have discussed, I mean, if we're going to talk about what God looks for in his people, we've discussed all the points. And it begins with somebody who has a heart that's been touched by the fear of the Lord. And that heart, which is the heart of the matter, it's who it's going to affect who you are. It is who you are. When that heart gets touched by the fear of the Lord and you begin to take God seriously, that's naturally going to produce within you wisdom and understanding. Doesn't mean you're going to be a truly, fully wise person. It takes time that you develop those things. And as I say, as wisdom grows, it solidifies, it becomes sound wisdom. As understanding grows, it should produce humility, that the two things should grow together. With that then comes prudence. That as that wisdom becomes more sound and you have a better ability to use the knowledge that you have, as that understanding keeps you humble so that you're not proud to just rush into stuff, but you actually stop and think about it. You consider the consequences and realize, you're not invincible, you're not immortal. You actually have to look at where all this is going. Prudence then starts to grow. At some point you start to see prudence peeking up its head in all of this. Now, since I'm kind of capping all that up, now that we finished looking at the good side of stuff, let's consider that other part of it. That someone who has wisdom and understanding, who's going in this path to get to prudence, because that is the path that wisdom and understanding are taking you on, is trying to get you to prudence, then that person too, because wisdom and understanding feed on knowledge, they listen, they learn. That's one of their main characteristics. It should be that you grow in your knowledge. Now, to be honest, it's not guaranteed that you're going to do that because it's dependent on you. It's not a heart issue, it's a mind issue. And so your mind is a blank slate when you come into all this. You have to spend your lifetime learning. And knowledge is what you know, and you either get it through education or you get it through experience. But one way or the other, as you go through life, you should be getting it. But wisdom and understanding make it easier to take that knowledge in and retain it. It makes you more hungry for that knowledge. And so because of that, it should produce it faster. And as somebody increases in that knowledge, it should bring forth that subtlety to where you begin to speak with some knowledge in your words. You start to reflect the knowledge that you're growing, that you now have. Something I don't think I'm doing a good job of tonight. And then with that knowledge now having led into subtlety and wisdom having led into sound wisdom, the same way that wisdom and understanding have produced prudence, they should, for your actions, then they should produce wisdom and knowledge, discretion for your words. It should affect the way you speak in such a way that you begin to take higher regard for your words and how they might affect people and so forth. And we'll see. I mean, in reality, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of what you say is very much affected by your own experiences and your own education. The more you've actually seen some things and experienced some things, you're a lot more careful with what you say. And so taking all of this, we've now been able to kind of do a recap of that whole side of things, the wisdom side of stuff. When we come back to this, we'll be looking at the foolish side of things, and we'll be doing a similar recap for all of that. We look at the dangers or the sin of being hasty in your actions. So with that, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and be typing those up for me. I have to apologize that last week somebody had asked a question, but it didn't come in until like right when I'd already clicked the button to close it. So I didn't get to answer that question. I sent them a message privately, though, to answer it. So if you have a question, try to get it in before I close out the live stream. I do appreciate you being here for everybody that's here. I hope that all this has made sense, that as I'm trying to tie all these ideas together and show how prudence really is, in a lot of ways, the goal of all of this. I hope that I've not lost anybody along the way, that I was able to tie it all together and make sense of it. Because I know it's a lot of terms, a lot of stuff being thrown around. That's why I brought the chart up for that last part of it. That way, even though I can't point and show you what I'm talking about, you hopefully could follow a little easier that way than if I'm just throwing a bunch of terms out there real fast. So I guess the goal of what we've been talking about this whole time, what God would really, most like to see produced in your life, is that you come to a place where you have an ability to use what knowledge, what you know, that you have an ability to use it, or you through understand, and I should say maybe so than or, uh, and you have the ability to take what knowledge is being fed to you and process that and understand what to do with it. So you don't just know how to use it, taking what you have and using it outwardly, but also having the ability to understand what to do with it as you take it in. Uh, and as you grow in that, that's going to help lead to this thing of prudence, where you have an ability to look down the road and make the proper decisions and realize, okay, this is going to have this impact on my family. This is going to have this impact on my job. This is going to have this impact on my education. This is going to have this impact on my life, and so forth. To realize that when things are dangerous and when things are going to get you in trouble, because that's really, if you pay attention to a lot of the verse we read, that's at the heart of it. It keeps you out of trouble, because you can realize that little things now that seem innocent to you, if you go down that path, are not going to be innocent. In fact, probably when we come back to talk about being hasty in your actions, one of the things we can talk about is the simple man who is often used as the one who goes to the strange woman and then ruins his life, because that one moment, that one decision that seems so small and unimportant, of going by the house of this woman who he knew was going to be a temptation to him, but yet he went anyways. That one decision was enough to destroy his entire life. And that's the thing we have to realize. That's, so many of the problems we get into, if we actually stop to look at it and consider where this is going to lead, we would never get in that trouble. Problem is, a lot of times we don't think about it, or we still lacking some prudence. Think about it, but think we're strong enough to handle it. Like, I know, this time I'm weak, but next time I'll be strong. And so we get ourselves in trouble over and over again because we don't actually exercise prudence. And that's why, again, I've titled this message "The Power of Prudence," not just because it sounds nice, but because prudence is one of the greatest power. It's almost like a superpower, in terms of what you can have as a Christian to help keep you on the right track. Even anybody in this life should want to have prudence and have the ability to look down the road and make the right decisions for their lives. We always say hindsight is 2020, but how much better would it be if we had 2020 vision when looking forward? And that's what prudence is trying to help you do, is to not look back and realize all the mistakes you made, but to be able to look forward and keep from making a lot of those mistakes. All right. I don't see any questions coming in, just a lot of good comments coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close out the live stream. If you made it this far, leave us an amen in the comments, if you will. I don't do good about asking people on the live videos to like, subscribe, share, all that kind of stuff. So let me mention that. As Nick always says, liking doesn't cost you anything, just a couple seconds to click. That helps to get videos spread out more. But one of the biggest things is if you can share and stuff and get more people attached to the videos, that would help. We got a lot of subscribers on YouTube, but I'm still trying to get my views up higher. And that's a lot of time going to be dependent on people getting stuff out there to others. So if you think any of the videos are helpful, be sure to share them with people. All right. I appreciate that. Let me put one note in before I close. And that's because most of the people watching this would not have gotten the message from me to know. But there has been several children who've gotten sick recently, either in the church, connected to the church, or around the city. And it seems that scarlet fever is peaking up. And I know two of my kids, Josiah and Emily, have that. And so I just want to let everybody know, like, for tomorrow, they won't be at church. Originally, I was told I'd have to keep them out for a week. I've recently been told that maybe that's not so. Maybe by Sunday, they'll be okay to be back around other kids again, since they're on antibiotics now. But just so anybody knows, just for tomorrow, the kids won't be at church. My kids won't be at church, neither Lori. Because of that, I will be there. And so, yeah, some people need to come in and fill up seats. Nick's cooking a good meal for us, and you need to make sure that there's people there to eat it and to enjoy with us. So if you had any excuses for missing church tomorrow, throw them away and come fill those seats, because like I say, I know some people with small kids may not be able to be in church tomorrow, possibly even Sunday as well for some. Like I say, mine maybe by Sunday may be okay. I have to do a little more research on it. But because I was originally told no, but it seems like after they start the antibiotics, they may be able to come back sooner rather than what was expected. But anyway, just maybe I mentioned pray for the kids, that scarlet fever is not what it used to be. It used to be uh, when I was growing up and you'd hear about it, there was one of those things you heard about back in the old days, used to kill everybody. Nowadays we have antibiotics and stuff, so it's not as bad as it used to be. But it's still something, that I would appreciate prayer for all the different kids who may be sick. So, all right. Thank you for being part of the live stream with us. I hope that it's been a help to you, and hope to see people at God's house tomorrow, and that you have a good evening today.